Hello, and thank you for joining us on the first episode of Opportunity Canada, Critical Minerals, a series made in partnership between Custom Content from the Wall Street Journal and Invest in Canada. As critical minerals become more essential, Canada occupies a special place. Among the top 10 reserves of global lithium, cobalt, copper, and nickel, the country is also home to some of the highest exploration expenditure in the world. And so, to kick us off, I'm joined here in Ottawa by Laurel Broten, the Chief Executive Officer of Invest in Canada, Canada's national investment promotion agency. Laurel is a lawyer with decades of experience in both business and government, and is a former minister in the Government of Ontario. She's now leading Invest in Canada's efforts to attract transformative investments in clean energy and sustainable transportation. Laurel, thank you so much for joining us today. So let's set the scene a little bit. From your vantage point, why are critical minerals in such high demand today?
Well, we're going through an exciting time. We're changing the way we generate energy for our homes, for our businesses, how we provide electricity and energy for transportation. And all of those things are key and critical in the global fight to tackle our carbon emissions. So these sectors emit significant CO2 into the environment. And so it's absolutely crucial that we change the way we're doing things. And the demand for critical minerals is driven by the need to power this clean revolution, this clean energy transition. And I think one of the things we often haven't talked about in a really transparent way is without critical minerals, there are no electric vehicles, there's no solar panels, there's no wind turbines, electricity flows through copper, wind turbines need manganese, and so these critical minerals are absolutely crucial to the aspirational goal that we've all set for ourselves. And Canada has a unique opportunity in that we have reserves of these critical minerals and the ability to work with partners to get them out of the ground. And we do know that right now, to reach net zero emissions by 2050, the supply needs to grow by an estimated 3.5 times. So we don't have what we need right now. We need to get more out of the ground, and that's really why we're having a conversation today about critical minerals.
Well, let's talk what you were saying, that Canada has a lot to offer there. What is it that Canada can do for companies that are really considering at this stage critical mineral investment?
So global companies who are looking to Canada with respect to critical minerals, I think the first thing is we have an abundance of critical minerals. We have them in the quantity that is needed for this revolution that we're talking about. We have a long history in the mining industry of sustainable practices, of ESG leadership. So also, I think, very important factors for an investor to consider. You also need to think about how you are going to provide energy to the operations that you may undertake in Canada. So we have clean electricity, 83% of our grid is non-emitting. So when you look at full cycle carbon emissions, that's a really important component. We have a very stable economy, a very stable political system, very educated population, a population that understands mining operations over many years. We have free trade agreements with 51 countries around the world, so you can set up your operations in Canada, get your critical minerals from Canada, and be able to trade those around the world. And we have an integrated automotive manufacturing sector across North America. So I think all of those factors are some of the reasons that Canada is now ranked number 1 in the world, the first in the Western Hemisphere for the EV battery supply chain, and among the best when it comes to green energy projects. So lots of things for us to be proud about in Canada.
Let's talk about timelines, the timeline it takes to get a mine producing here in Canada. When you're talking to investors, how does that affect, I guess, the level of interest, the types of investors that you're seeing, especially in this critical mineral sector?
Well, I think we all know, and those looking at these opportunities would really feel the urgency. The opportunities are not for 10 or 20 years down the road. We will continue to see growth, but we really do need these critical minerals right now to meet the commitment to reduce CO2 to drive the energy transition. So we know across Canada we have conversations taking place across all levels of government who are part of the regulatory regime to see how we continue to keep very high standards as we have in Canada, but make decisions more quickly, run systems in a parallel track, get projects into production to meet those needs and meet that skyrocketing demand. We have many junior miners who are ready to take the next step, but many of them need strategic partners and investors who can help bring the project to fruition and bring that management expertise and relationships with customers to the table. And that's the conversation that we at Invest in Canada have with global investors every day.
It's a big picture. How do you decide what to focus on there? What's your main focus when you're looking at attracting those investors?
Our main focus at Invest in Canada, my main focus, is finding serious investors to help bring Canada's critical mineral projects to fruition.
As we've discussed, it can take years to sort of yield result, and given that alongside ever-present geopolitical concerns, how can the investors that you're speaking to navigate the potential risks and opportunities in critical minerals financing across a sort of global scale?
So I think I've said we have the natural resources, we have the market access, we have a skilled workforce, economic and political stability. But one of the things that we know is increasingly important is traceability of those minerals. And I really want to unpack what that means. As we move to a recognition that you need to measure your carbon footprint for whatever product, let's talk about an electric vehicle. You need to really understand where those critical minerals have come from. And there's a significant move afoot globally to be able to identify on a vehicle, where did the lithium come from? What was the carbon footprint of that lithium? And so we're moving to a future where consumers want full transparency in what they're buying. And there's really no green revolution in the auto industry if the content of your car isn't green. So consumers want to know, where did the minerals come from for the battery in their car? Did it have ethical labor standards? What was the carbon footprint? What was the electricity used to generate that? And I think they also want to know that those components didn't cross the globe 8 times before they got in a vehicle. I know when I talk to folks who are making the decision to buy an electric vehicle, they're doing it, in many instances, they want to do something for the planet and for their children. So they really want that to have a meaningful impact, and so that traceability of the critical minerals and everything that Canada offers when it comes to tracing the footprint, tracing the standards, understanding the history of that mineral are absolutely crucial to delivering on the promise of the green vehicle.
It's a lot to think about there. What would you say is your key takeaway for people to understand about Canada?
The key takeaway for investors who are thinking about Canada is traceability. Traceability is what Canada offers, and it's what critical minerals in the future will require.
Could you give us an example of that sort of thing?
So for example, we've been working, and this is out in the public domain, that we are very pleased that Northvolt will be choosing Canada and has chosen Canada. They're from Sweden. They chose Canada as the place to build the greenest EV batteries in the world, and they specifically identified Canada's traceability advantage for that.
We know that critical mineral production really is limited to a very small number of nations. Why is it important for Canada to attract foreign direct investment into the economy?
If we think maybe back to basics, sometimes I think folks are surprised, why are you out talking about this from Invest in Canada? We think about the Industrial Revolution. We need to be honest with ourselves. This is also a big revolution that is taking place. The Industrial Revolution was fueled by investment and innovation and private sector involvement. This green revolution will also need to be driven by innovation and investment from the private sector. There is a funding gap between our opportunity and where we are right now. It is commonly known, it was discussed at COP this year, trillions of dollars between where we are right now and where we want to be to achieve industrial sustainability. So that's the conversation that we're having with global investors. We know they are all out looking around the world where they can invest, where there is opportunity. Governments have a role to play, certainly, but we really do know that we need to bring all partners to the table to unlock the potential that Canada has with respect to critical minerals. And that's really the work that we do at Invest in Canada.
What does that look like? What sort of partnerships are you working currently?
So again, already out in the public domain, some really great things that are taking place and massive significant investments. Dow Chemical, chosen Canada, working in Canada for their first net zero ethylene cracker in Alberta. BHP, we're working with BHP, who's investing billions of dollars in the province of Saskatchewan, where I was born, to supply the world with potash, which is also a necessary critical mineral. You look at Roquette from France, who has operations in Manitoba, sustainable food supplies, largest pea protein facility, and that's in Manitoba. And if I think a little bit closer to Atlantic Canada, where I currently live, Michelin. Significant investments by Michelin France to be able to build and create tires for the new electric vehicle. So lots of interesting things happening across the country in a variety of different areas.
Let's look across the border a little bit too and talk about the US Inflation Reduction Act. How has that impacted Canada's efforts to secure FDI, and what specific measures are being taken there to stimulate investments related to critical minerals in Canada?
So the Inflation Reduction Act is hugely ambitious, and I think it really presented a new context for attracting investments, no question about it. We've had a lot of conversations with companies about the Inflation Reduction Act. I think what it did for us in Canada is it made us very intentional about our desire to go and look around the world and find companies who we believed would be key investors for the sustainability that we've been trying to drive as a country. We can't compete on every industry and supply chain, but in the EV and critical mineral space, we are absolutely competing, and we're doing that. And we used the opportunity of the Inflation Reduction Act, and it brought a light on North America, and we tried to pull that light into Canada, talking about an integrated North American automobile sector as an example, the collaboration between Canada and the United States when it comes to automotive and critical mineral. And Canada put its own incentive packages on the table with tax credits, funding programs for mining exploration, transportation, infrastructure, and manufacturing. And it's working. You know, we are attracting billions of dollars of investment since the launch of the IRA, and we continue to do that. So I think it's allowed us to tell a story about Canada and have a conversation about the opportunities that exist in Canada for companies who turned their eyes to North America as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act.
With an increasing focus on environmental, social, and governance, ESG as we all know it, those sort of factors, how does Canada stand out for its application of these principles when it comes to critical minerals mining?
So it's given Canada an opportunity to tell its story. Canada is a mining jurisdiction. We have a long history of mining in Canada, and we have a long history of sustainable mining. If you think about the Mining Association of Canada, who I know you're going to be speaking to in one of these podcasts, the Towards Sustainable Mining standard, which was established by MAC, is 20 years old. This is not new for us. Mining communities have existed across our country. They've been good partners in community, and they've had a strong lens with respect to sustainability standards. We have strong regulation in Canada, absolutely. Ethical labor standards, which is critical in the mining industry and which provides a strong comparator to some other jurisdictions. Community participation, community involvement, and good corporate governance, which again, I would say Canada has been a leader in over many years. So you roll all those things together and you take it to the next level with an increasing focus on sustainability and carbon footprint. And then I think you have a world-class standard that was pioneered in Canada and is now rolling out around the world and is a leadership standard.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to that conversation with the Mining Association of Canada. Technological advancements obviously are driving demand for specific critical minerals. We discussed that a little bit at the top of the show. And how are they influencing investment decisions, and how is Canada positioned in terms of technological innovation in this critical minerals sector?
Major investments are coming into play to respond to demand. So it's always positive when there's a demand for a mineral or a product or service because that makes companies invest in that sector. So it's not just about electric vehicles, it's about the entire energy transition, the rapid revolution of building up supply chains as well. And so if you think about something like, how we have worked in the sector of iron ore. We've been in that sector for a long time, but now we're seeing an evolution of looking for iron ore that drives green steel production. We have many of the components that are needed for the batteries, the magnets, etc. How can you make those more efficiently? How can you use them sustainably? How can we recycle them? Huge technological advancements which are driven by sustainability and driven by an examination of this entire carbon footprint. It really makes you make different decisions. I know years and years ago, we talked about you can't externalize your costs. If you have waste, it wasn't always viewed as a cost of business, but it is a cost to the business. And so in this sector, I think we're really digging deep into how we can best use these critical minerals to their best advantage and use them in a very sustainable way. And that does drive innovation. It makes you want to use less, it makes you want to recycle, it makes you want to be more efficient, and all of those components. And the industry itself, there's some very exciting initiatives taking place, which I can't wait to be able to see out in the public domain.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the companies currently in Canada that are leading this sort of innovation in critical minerals?
We're really lucky in Canada to have such significant leaders, and so we've had really important announcements over the last few years. We know that Rio Tinto is using its operations in Canada to make greener aluminum. They've partnered with Alcoa to produce aluminum using inert cathode technology. That's critically important for those listeners. That's going to reduce Scope 1 emissions in the smelting process. So that's a concrete change that will really help us with respect to the drive for carbon reduction. Nano One has patented manufacturing technology. It's called the One Pot process, and it streamlines the process and reduces the cost of producing cathode materials. Companies in Canada are also mining lithium from salt water, from the brine, in abandoned oil wells. So that's also an example of finding a different recovery strategy for what would have been waste. And there's many other examples. So it's an exciting time, and we are very pleased to be able to be part of it.
When you think about international investors, how do you tell them about the current opportunities that they could find in Canada for critical mineral projects?
So when we get an opportunity to talk to international investors, which we do all over the world and have had many events and opportunities where we've been able to bring the Canada story forward, one of the things we always start with is that it is a national opportunity. There's opportunities from coast to coast to coast. We have all of the minerals required for EV battery materials: lithium, cobalt, graphite, nickel, manganese, and more. We have copper and rare earth materials as well for the energy transition. And our projects are at all stages. So for an investor looking at Canada, there are exploration stage projects, there are development stage projects. There's truly a wealth of opportunities across Canada, and those opportunities are open for those who have a history of investing in the mineral sector. But I would also say they are very opportune for institutional investors who are driving sustainable investments and looking for ways to drive this energy revolution, this transition that we are in, and we're looking for investment-ready projects. And we have that and can help them identify those in Canada. So my message to investors is Canada is the place you should be looking. Reach out to us and we can really help you understand what opportunities exist here in Canada.
And how is it that these global companies and investors can work directly with you at Invest in Canada?
So we are Canada's investment promotion agency. We have a very strong team. We seek out transformative investments. We work at the highest levels. Critical minerals, as we're talking about, is obviously one of those. And we work in partnership across all the government of Canada to look for those opportunities. We connect investors to the partners and the people that they need to know to evaluate and understand that project, and then to see that investment come to fruition. So for anyone who's listening and is interested, reach out to us at Invest in Canada. We're here to help. My message to investors would be the energy transition, the revolution is taking place today. And the time to invest in critical minerals which are absolutely crucial to us being able to deliver on that aspiration and that transition is now. Nothing's possible without critical minerals. So the time to invest in critical minerals is now, and the place to invest is Canada.
Laurel, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. It's clear that probably few other countries possess the advantages for critical mineral investment that Canada does. And thank you also for listening. This has been the first episode of Opportunity Canada, a program made in partnership between Custom Content at the Wall Street Journal and Invest in Canada. Join us again in a couple of weeks to hear from Pierre Graton, the Chief Executive of the Mining Association of Canada, where we'll dive deep into ESG and the future of mining.